Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Carry On, a podcast covering issues relevant to veterans and those who care about them. Carry On is brought to you by Nation's Finest. At Nation's Finest, our mission is to support America's military veterans and their families with a comprehensive approach to housing, health, and employment that helps them to achieve self-sufficiency and reach their full potential. With more than 30 locations in 15 communities across California, Arizona, and Nevada, each year we provide critical support to more than 7,000 veterans and their families. If you or a veteran you know need help, or if you'd like to make a donation, please visit nationsfinest.org or call 833-468-9676. I'm your host, Mark Miller, Army veteran and Communications Director for Nation's Finest. In today's episode, American Red Cross Senior Vice President for International Services and Service to the Armed Forces, Koby Langley, will join us to talk about what the future of veteran advocacy looks like. As Senior Vice President for International Services and Service to the Armed Forces, Koby Langley provides oversight and direction for the American Red Cross programs around the world and oversees worldwide support provided to service members, veterans, and their families, the oldest congressionally chartered mission of the American Red Cross. Operating the largest integrated emergency and critical support case management system for military families in the world, the military counts on the Red Cross to provide emergency communications that link them with their families during a crisis, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Langley previously served as the Director of Wounded Warrior, Veteran, and Military Family Engagement at the White House and was Senior Advisor for the Wounded Warrior, Veteran, and Military Family Initiatives for CNCS. Before that, he was Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary and Senior Advisor for the Office of Wounded Warrior Care and Transition Policy. Langley does not just serve veterans now, but is a veteran himself, having conducted over 100 Foreign Claims Act and laws of armed conflict missions and convoys in Iraq, and served as an operational law attorney and prosecutor for the 82nd Airborne Division. Langley also served as a litigation counsel for the Army when he practiced with dozens of attorneys in the Department of Justice, assisting in successful litigation of over 150 cases. He has published in numerous national news outlets and has conducted visiting correspondent interviews for Fox News and MSNBC. Langley is a two-tour combat veteran and Bronze Star recipient for meritorious service. Mr. Koby Langley, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with Nation's Finest. It's an outstanding organization that provides incredible supportive resources to our service members and our veteran communities, particularly those that are really looking for a way to improve their housing situation as well as their community.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, sir, and that means a lot coming from you. So first of all, in that vein, thank you for your lifetime of service, both in the military and taking care of military veterans and their families after your time in the military. It's very inspiring. So that's inspiring to me, and I'm sure a lot of our audience. But let's talk about what inspired you. What inspired you to continue serving the military community after you separated from the military yourself?
So, it's really interesting that you asked that, Mark. I mean, I think, the passion to serve is something that is part of most service members' experience. And depending upon the individual motivation of coming into the military, many individuals, according to, some exit survey data from DOD, came in to serve for financial stability reasons, and others for patriotic reasons, many of whom served because their family members served. And that was the case for me. My dad served, my uncle served, and when I got in, my sister served as well. She went to Afghanistan before I went to Iraq. And, we have plenty of aunts and uncles in our family that served as well. So it was a part of the legacy of service in my family that dates all the way back to the Civil War. So I was just compelled, from a family engagement perspective, and I just had a deep respect for military service because all the people that I looked up to, my family members had served. So that's what got me into the military, and And that's a story that's pretty common. More than 60% of today's current active duty service members have family members that also serve.
Well, inspiring yet again. Wow, family service dating back to, you said, the Civil War?
Yeah, all the way back
Wow.
to the Civil War. And every combat theater since then, aunts and uncles, grandfather, and great aunts, great uncles served as well in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and then of course OIF and OEF in Afghanistan.
Wow, well, very, very honorable for you and your family, and thank you for carrying on that legacy. That's a lot to be proud of. So let's talk a little bit more now about your current role. Your current role with the Red Cross as Senior Vice President for International Services and Service to the Armed Forces. Now, I know that's a big fancy title, but what does that mean to service members and veterans? And most of us veterans, myself included, we're familiar with the Red Cross message system that's used for communicating and verifying family emergencies, but I'm sure that's not the whole scope. So can you tell us a little bit more about the services provided to the military and to veterans by the Red Cross?
Sure. So the services span a few things. The first one is emergency services. That's the one that you're familiar with, and it's the one that most people are familiar with, the emergency Red Cross messages. We also do resiliency programs, so licensed behavioral health care providers that help provide supportive services to service members and veterans who are looking for somebody to talk to and learn better communication skills. We do provide some veteran service support for individuals that are looking for support with their appeals, as an example. We have VA hospital programs and military treatment facility hospital programs as well, where we recruit and replace both clinical and non-clinical volunteers in military treatment facilities and VA hospitals all around the globe. In addition to that, we deploy our team members into forward theaters in order to provide morale and welfare support, much like the USO does, but more importantly, to help ensure there's connectivity for that AMCROS message so that we can find that service member and get the message delivered to their command as quickly as humanly possible. Those are the core services that we provide today, and almost all of them we've been providing for over 140 years, the length of the existence of the American Red Cross. Our congressional charter first came into being in 1905, if you could believe that. And we've been directly engaged in providing supportive services to our military in every combat theater since World War I. And that continues today. I have a team in Iraq right now as we speak. We have teams in Poland. We have teams in Romania. I have a team in Djibouti on the Horn of Africa. We had a team in Afghanistan until the drawdown. And we have a team on the DMZ right now in South Korea.
Well, that's something I don't think everyone's always aware of, is that we know we have troops deployed to all these areas, and those that support them, members of your team, also deployed. So before we jump into any more questions, I'll leave you the floor here if there's anything you'd like to say to our audience about your team out there doing their work.
So I'm incredibly proud of that work. This is something that dates back to the origins of the American Red Cross. For folks that are fans of history, and I know a lot of military folks are fans of military history, Clara, Barton, Civil War battlefield. The battlefield specifically was Antietam, and it's less than an hour away from where our national headquarters are. And that was, and still remains today, the bloodiest one-day battle in our nation's history. Lost service members in the South and in the North, and Clara Barton got a train load actually, of medical supplies and equipment, and reported up to the front lines and began caring for the war wounded. And that began the inspiration for what would later on become the American Red Cross a few years later. So our service, our forward deployed service, to help take care of our wounded, ill, and injured service members, to make sure that they have a direct line of communication back home in case of an emergency, and also to make sure that at the end of the day, people know that your American citizens and volunteers care about you enough to forward deploy to stand there with you. That legacy of service is something we should all be really proud of. It's a quiet legacy of service, and unfortunately, we have had hundreds of Red Crossers that did not return from that mission. So it's a special mission. And it's also one that I think that most of your audience can relate to. Many of the folks that are served by America's Finest are combat war veterans, and they understand the service and sacrifice that means, as well as the challenges in reintegration that can present. So when organizations like America's Finest understand the unique needs of our veteran populations as they come home, it's a really important part of that legacy of service as well. So it's great to be a part of the American Red Cross. It's also great to help support America's Finest in the work that they do every day as well.
Well, we appreciate that support, and we appreciate everything your teams do, the hard work they're putting forth, and of course, our thoughts and prayers are with all of our troops, but all of our members overall, to include those of the Red Cross, USO, and everyone who's overseas doing that hard work, taking care of our troops, because the troops don't do it alone, and those of us who have served in combat know that. So thank you to you and your team for that. So throughout your career, you've served in a combat zone yourself and worked with countless combat veterans. What do you see as the most important issue or issues surrounding care and support to veterans and their families in the decade to come, as we look forward here with maybe less combat veterans, but potentially needing and understanding more help? Where do you see the next decade when it comes to taking care of our American military veterans?
So there are a couple of areas that are of concern, and in my role and responsibilities, working for very senior levels at both DoD and VA, as well as the senior advisor to the President of the United States when I was at the White House on this constituency in the veteran military family space, engaging with VSOs and MSOs on a regular recurring basis to help bring their voices inside of the White House. Having seen all of that, there's one recurring theme that continues to nag at me, and I would hopefully think other people that are in this space, and that's the challenge of reintegration and disconnectedness. So when service members come back home, making sure that they are connected directly to organizations and entities and individuals that can assist them in that transition process, but also ensure that they have a community of network that extends beyond the veteran and military family space. Really important. Less than 1% of active duty service, or excuse me, less than 1% of America's population currently serves in our armed services. That was double digits in World War I and World War II. The level of veterans inside of the United States is declining at a rapid pace. And what that means is there are less individuals that understand the service and sacrifice of a service member and their families. What that also means is our leaders have less perspective on what that service and sacrifice actually means, and might not be as protective of the health, safety, and wellness of our service members because they don't really understand that service and sacrifice. So this is commonly referred to as the civil military divide, and the need to bridge the civil military divide. Plenty of writings and academic opines on that issue, but it's quite simple. The more opportunities that we can engage returning veterans and their families with non-veteran community members that want to help support them, as well as learn about what it really means to serve, the better off we're all going to be. That's why programs like the programs that Nation's Finest runs, and that other organizations that engage everyday American citizens in serving and supporting the veteran community are so critically important. I think of emerging nonprofits like Team Rubicon, like Team Red, White, and Blue. I think of Mission Continues. These are organizations that are newer and resonate slightly more with this generation of veterans than perhaps some of the legacy organizations do. And I count the American Red Cross as one of those legacy organizations. So it really is incumbent upon us to make sure that we're taking extra effort to serve with, by, and for our veteran military family communities. And what that means is non-citizens have to be a part of that equation.
I think those are great points, achieving that understanding from the non-military group to kind of create a better environment for the reintegration of those combat veterans. I think that's an excellent vision. So after hearing your thoughts and vision on the future of service to our troops, now, and hopefully this will be a positive answer, how do you think we're doing right now as a nation? And specifically, are we taking better care of our military veterans now as opposed to 20, 30 years ago? Because I know we do face a lot of the challenges with reintegration and the feeling of combat veterans being kind of disengaged or separated from society. But how would you say we're doing now as compared to the last 20 or 30 years?
So I think it's interesting because the level of services are better and more expansive and more supported. When I first went to the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2008, 2009, the total budget was close to 100 million. It was maybe 90 million or so, excuse me, 900. And that number was okay. It's significantly higher now. It's almost twice as high, almost 3 times as high. More investment now in the Department of Veterans Affairs. And when you see those numbers rise and the investments, rise in the care and support, of veterans, and just in my one program area, having seen it grown that much, it means that the country has made an investment in supportive services. So I would say more programs and services certainly than where there were in 2008 and 2009 timeframe than there are now. And the total VA budget, I was just talking about, the program budget that I was involved in, the total VA budget has almost tripled as well over that same time frame. And that's a significant investment of taxpayer dollars to improve the services that we provide to the veteran military family community. But in addition to that, there's a trust component to serving our veteran military family community, particularly our veteran service members who may not have trusted the VA in the past for a variety of different reasons, or may have reason to be suspicious of the Department of Veterans Affairs and the services that they provide in the past, as well as other veteran service organizations. But the trust in the VA has significantly improved since they started tracking trust in the VA. So I would say in general, the services that are being provided, the investments that have been made have been significantly better over the past decade plus. What hasn't improved, I think, and some local research studies by Washington Post and others have proven this to be the case, is there's still this level of not fulsome understanding of service and sacrifice. So although our country is quite generous and supportive of our veteran community, we can still continue to do more. We can continue to combat veteran homelessness, which we still haven't solved. We can continue to improve reintegration efforts and employment. What we're seeing on the employment front, as an example, is although veteran employment is at historically low rates, so is general unemployment for the population at large. Retaining veterans is something that organizations can spend a little bit more time thinking about and investing in. How long is that veteran staying in that position, and how long are you able to keep that veteran in that job? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? So retention of veteran populations is a place where we can probably invest more time and resources as well. But in general, to answer your question, much better resources, much larger investments, much stronger commitments from our executive and from our Congress in supporting organizations and entities that provide supportive services outside the VA as well. We need to continue those types of investments.
Well, that's great news to hear that that so much has been invested monetarily and in programs, but with a taste of reality as well, that we still have work to do. And sir, we are certainly at Nation's Finest on board to help with that, and I know the Red Cross is as well. So we continue to take on those missions, especially with veteran homelessness and increased understanding of veteran issues. So great answer there. Thank you so much for that insight. So as we draw to a close here, I want to put on the table from your time in the military, your status as a veteran, and all the hard work you've done in our government and now at the American Red Cross. What final thoughts would you like to share with our audience of military veterans and their families? What would you like to share with them today?
So a few things. The first is please continue to invest in recruiting and engaging everyday citizens in serving with you. So if you're a veteran, you're listening to this podcast, if you're a non-veteran, you're listening to this podcast, look for opportunities to volunteer with organizations that serve veteran military family communities, and just don't talk to yourselves. Talk to your friends that maybe don't have a connection to you, or people in your community that don't have a connection to the veteran military family space. Find places to serve with non-veterans in the community. It's really going to help all of us in the long run. The second thing I would suggest is don't forget about organizations like the American Red Cross that provide these supportive services really quietly in the background. We could certainly use volunteers working for us, working in those VA hospitals, working in those military treatment facilities, helping to expedite this emergency communication process, helping to provide behavioral health supportive services for a veteran military family community. Come and volunteer for the American Red Cross as well. We're here to help support you. And the last thing I would leave you all with is something very specific and tactical. Download the Hero Care app. This is a digital native veteran community right outside your door. Over 80% of today's military are millennials. So we need to be able to provide services that speak to them. The American Red Cross has the Hero Care app. You can download it on Android or iOS devices. You can request an emergency communication message. You can also request a resiliency workshop, and you can peruse all of the other type of supportive services that are being provided by the American Red Cross as well as local community members. So those are my three messages. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk the nation's finest. This has been an outstanding podcast, and I look forward to continued discussions.
Mr. Koby Langley, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again. Thank you again for your service in the military, and thank you for your continued service to our veterans today. We really appreciate everything you do. And if you want to hang out here for a minute in the broadcast room, we're going to go ahead and close up. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
And a big thank you to all of you who joined us today. We'll be back next week discussing issues relevant to veterans and those who care about them. And again, if you or a veteran you know needs help, or if you'd like to make a donation or volunteer, please visit nationsfinest.org or call 833-468-9676. And of course, if you're interested in volunteering for the Red Cross, as Mr. Langley just said, they'd be happy to have you as well. So thank you again for joining us. And as always, carry on.